The sun's rays were dappled by the swaying trees overhead, filtering golden light onto the pristine aisle where I was soon to walk. I, Mia Thompson, clad in an elegant white gown, peeked out from behind the grand wooden doors of the chapel, eager to steal a glimpse of the eagerly waiting guests. The soft murmur of voices combined with the melodic hum of the string quartet playing in the background. Emma, my lifelong friend and maid of honor, linked her arm through mine, squeezing gently. "You look like something out of a fairy tale, Mia." I chuckle softly, brushing an errant tear. "Thank you. I've been dreaming about this day since I was a little girl." Emma smiled, her eyes glistening. "And Richard is a lucky man." Yet, even as the warmth of the moment enveloped us, I couldn't help but notice Richard from afar. Dressed in a crisp black tux, his dark hair brushed back, he looked every bit the handsome groom. But my heart caught when I observed him locking eyes with a girl seated among the guests. She had raven black hair, pinned up elegantly, and wore a dress that perfectly matched the wedding's pastel theme. Emma followed my gaze and whispered, "Who's she? Do you know her?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I don't recognize her. Maybe she's from Richard's side of the family?" Before Emma could reply, the quartet's music crescendoed into the bridal march, and the chapel doors slowly swung open. As I began my walk, the curious exchange between Richard and the mysterious girl plagued my mind. My father, sensing my distraction, whispered reassuringly, "It's okay, sweetheart. Just focus on the moment." The ceremony was a beautiful blur. The priest's solemn words, our vows, and the elation that coursed through me as we were declared husband and wife. The chapel erupted in applause as we shared our first kiss as a married couple, but amidst the joy, the seed of doubt had been planted. At the reception, while everyone reveled in the festivities, I found myself scanning the crowd, searching for the unfamiliar face that had unsettled me. My thoughts were interrupted by Richard, who approached holding 2 glasses of champagne. "To us," he said, clinking his glass against mine. I forced a smile, taking a sip. "To us," I echoed, hoping that the uneasy feeling would soon pass and that the day would remain as I had always envisioned it. Perfect. The aroma of fresh paint and blooming roses welcomed us to our new home, a 2-story house situated in a peaceful neighborhood. I had dreamt of owning a house with a white picket fence, and Richard had made sure we found just the right one. Large bay windows spilled sunlight into the living room, and our laughter echoed through the halls as we tried arranging our furniture. "This one here," Richard said, pushing the deep blue couch closer to the fireplace and the bookshelf there, by the window. "What do you think?" I surveyed the room, imagining cozy winter nights and sun-dappled mornings. "It's perfect," I murmured. Days turned into weeks, and life fell into a predictable, comfortable routine. Mornings were a hurried affair with Richard scrambling eggs while I toasted bread. Evenings, we'd cozy up on the couch, talking about our day. But as time ticked by, something shifted. Richard began coming home late, his tie askew, his eyes weary. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just the strain of settling into a new life. But one night, after he missed yet another dinner, I found myself waiting by the window, watching the street for his familiar car. When he finally walked in past midnight, I couldn't hide my concern. "Richard, you've been coming home late so often. What's going on?" He avoided my gaze, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's just work, Mia. There's a big project, and I'm trying to make a good impression." I nodded, though his explanation did little to quell my anxiety. "I understand, but you have to take care of yourself. And us. It feels like we're drifting apart." He sighed, pulling me close. "I promise, Mia, it's just a phase. Things will get back to normal soon." Yet, days turned into weeks, and the distance between us grew. Conversations became perfunctory, and our cozy evenings turned into solitary nights with me curled up with a book and Richard glued to his laptop. One evening, as I served dinner, I tried to breach the subject again. "Richard, we need to talk. This isn't us. We promised to be each other's rock, but lately, it feels like I'm living with a stranger." He looked up, his eyes shadowed with guilt. "Mia, I'm so sorry. Let me make it up to you. How about a weekend getaway? I smiled weakly, hoping against hope that a brief escape could mend the growing rift between us. All right, I whispered. A weekend away might be just what we need. But as the days rolled on, the promise of a weekend away was overshadowed by Richard's announcement of a month-long business trip. And once again, doubt and uncertainty crept into our new beginning. The morning was cool, and the sky painted a gentle hue of lilac as I prepared breakfast. The kettle hissed, filling the room with the scent of brewing coffee. Richard shuffled in, looking unusually pensive. He hesitated before sitting at the breakfast nook. "Mia," he began, avoiding my eyes, "there's something I need to tell you." I placed a steaming mug in front of him, my heart skipping a beat. "What is it?" He sighed heavily, taking a long sip before speaking. "Work wants me to head overseas for a month-long assignment. It's an incredible opportunity, Maya, but I know it's a long time to be away." I tried to mask my disappointment, remembering his late nights and the distance that had already grown between us. "A month, Richard? That's an awfully long time. Can't someone else go?" Richard frowned, seemingly choosing his words carefully. "It's a big project, and they believe I'm the best fit." I didn't want to let the team down. Memories of our recent estrangement clouded my mind, and it was hard to shake off the feeling of unease. "I understand work commitments, Richard," I replied, my voice steady, "but what about our commitments? What about the weekend getaway you promised? Doesn't that mean anything?" He reached across the table, his fingers brushing against mine. "I'm sorry, Mia. I promise I'll make it up to you. Let's go away somewhere special when I return." As days passed, my apprehension grew. The house felt emptier, its walls echoing with unsaid words and unshared moments. The evening before his departure, we had a quiet dinner. It felt more like a truce than a farewell. He spoke of the places he'd visit and the work he'd be doing, trying to paint a vivid picture of his impending journey. I listened, nodding and smiling, but an insidious doubt gnawed at me. That night, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned, haunted by thoughts of the mysterious girl at our wedding and the growing gulf between Richard and me. Somewhere around dawn, I was roused by hushed tones emanating from the next room. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tiptoed closer to the door, pressing my ear against its cool surface. "No! She doesn't suspect a thing," Richard's voice floated through, tinged with anxiety. "I've told her it's a business trip. We'll have a month just like we planned." My heart raced. My mind tried to dismiss it as a fragment of a dream. But the words, their implications, and Richard's secretive tone were unmistakable. The next morning, he left with a brief kiss on my forehead and a promise to call as soon as he landed. As the door closed behind him, I felt a mix of fear, anger, and betrayal. The seeds of doubt planted on our wedding day had grown into a looming tree, casting a shadow on everything I thought I knew about our relationship. The silence that followed Richard's departure was oppressive. I wandered our home, touching familiar objects as though seeking solace from them. The photograph from our honeymoon in Santorini, the ceramic vase we bought on our first date, every corner was a testament to our shared history. Yet, that overheard conversation rang in my ears, raising questions I was afraid to confront. I mustered up courage and dialed his office, hoping to speak to his boss. After a few redirects, Mr. Brennan, Richard's supervisor, answered. Mia! How can I help you?" His voice was genial, but businesslike. "I was just wondering about Richard's assignment," I began, feigning casual curiosity. "He left for a month-long trip today. I was hoping to surprise him with something when he returns. Can you give me any details?" There was a brief, loaded pause. "Maya?" he hesitated. "I'm not aware of any business trip. In fact, Richard hasn't been with the company for the past month." My world swirled, threatening to shatter. "But that's impossible," I protested weakly. "He leaves for work every morning." "I'm truly sorry, Mia," Mr. Brennan replied, genuine concern lacing his tone. "I thought you knew. He was let go due to some discrepancies we found." Ending the call, A tidal wave of emotions washed over me. Betrayal, confusion, anger, each sentiment jostling for attention. Driven by a sudden impulse, I scoured Richard's study. Amid a mess of papers, an airline ticket stub caught my eye. The destination wasn't any business hub, but a tropical island. I was seized with an idea and logged into our joint account. A quick perusal showed a sharp decline in our balance. Over $200,000 had been siphoned off within days. My blood ran cold. Could Richard really deceive me on such a scale? It was time for clarity. I reached out to Jake, an old friend from college who had become a private investigator. He had always been astute and had a knack for uncovering the truth. Over a coffee at a quiet cafe, I poured out my story. Jake frowned, listening intently. Let me get this straight. Richard lied about his job, took off on a mysterious business trip, and there's a significant amount missing from your account. I nodded, struggling to hold back tears. We'll get to the bottom of this, Mia, he said with determination. Give me a day or two. A whirlwind 48 hours followed. Jake used his contacts, tapped into flight details, and tracked credit card usage. What he uncovered was both shocking and heart-wrenching. Photos emerged capturing Richard with the same mysterious woman from our wedding. The two seemed to be having the time of their lives, carefree and in love. As the evidence piled up, the facade of our marriage crumbled. Every whispered "I love you," every shared dream appeared to be nothing more than elaborate lies. I wasn't just dealing with the aftermath of an affair. I was grappling with a realization that my life as I knew it had been a deception. The house felt different without Richard's presence, as though it too were bearing the weight of betrayal. Night after night, I'd sit in the dimly lit living room, clutching a glass of wine and rehashing every moment of our relationship, searching for missed signs. One evening, amidst my introspection, a quiet knock interrupted my thoughts. I opened the door to find Sarah, my best friend since childhood. She had an uncanny ability to sense when I was in distress, even without me saying a word. She wrapped me in a comforting hug, her warmth providing a momentary respite. Hey, how are you holding up? I sighed, guiding her inside. Every day feels like a challenge, Sarah. But I can't let Richard's betrayal define me. Sarah, her eyes filled with concern and pride, replied, That's the spirit. Remember, you're strong and you've got this. As the night wore on, our conversation shifted from heartbreak to action. What are you planning to do about the money? She asked. I've already blocked the card, I began, feeling a newfound determination. He can't use any more of it. But I need to get back what he took. Sarah nodded, her gaze steely. He can't get away with this, Mia. You should consider pressing charges. The following week was a whirlwind of legal consultations, paperwork, and strategic planning. My attorney, a sharp woman named Ms. Clara Green, was a beacon of support and guidance. She assured me that with the evidence at hand, we had a strong case. During one of our meetings, she looked at me intently. Mia, I know this is tough, but remember, this isn't just about the money. It's about reclaiming your life. Her words struck a chord. While I initially sought justice for the stolen funds, I realized that this fight was about more than that. It was about standing up against deceit, reclaiming my identity, and setting a precedent that such actions have consequences. Days later, I received an irate call from Richard. His voice, once comforting, now dripped with desperation. Mia, why did you block the card? Do you have any idea how humiliating it was when it was declined? I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of strength. You shouldn't have taken what wasn't yours, Richard. I trusted you, and you betrayed me. Now you'll face the consequences. His threats and pleas fell on deaf ears. With each passing day, my resolve strengthened. With the help of Jake, we managed to get a tip on Richard's location. Acting on the information, local law enforcement, in collaboration with Interpol, apprehended him. News of his arrest was bittersweet. As I saw him being escorted, handcuffed, a flurry of emotions enveloped me. The love and trust we shared were now tainted memories, replaced by images of his deceit. But amidst the chaos, I found a silver lining. I was taking control of my narrative, refusing to be just another victim of betrayal. The courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations and the shuffling of papers. As I took my seat, I glanced around, spotting familiar faces. Sarah, Jake, and a few close colleagues. Their presence was a comforting reminder that I wasn't alone in this battle. At the front, Richard, now looking disheveled and defeated, awaited the commencement of proceedings. Our eyes met briefly, his filled with regret and apprehension. Mine resolute. The judge, an older, stern-looking gentleman with silver hair, called the courtroom to order. As the proceedings began, the air was thick with tension. Miss Green was eloquent, methodically presenting evidence of Richard's deceit, financial fraud, and the emotional trauma he'd inflicted upon me. The pictures of Richard and the other woman, bank statements, and testimonies from Jake and Mr. Brennan built a damning case against him. Richard's attorney, a nervous-looking young man, tried to paint a picture of Richard as a misguided husband, led astray by seduction and bad decisions. Your Honor, he implored, Mr. Hamilton acknowledges his mistakes and seeks leniency. As the testimonies proceeded, Sarah was called to the stand. With a steely resolve, she spoke of our friendship and the countless nights I'd spent confiding in her, torn apart by the betrayal. Then came my moment. As I approached the stand, memories flooded back. The joyful moments, the crushing discovery of his infidelity, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Drawing a deep breath, I began, we promised each other a lifetime, but what I received in return was a web of lies. Miss Green, gently guiding my testimony, asked, "And how has this betrayal affected you, Mia?" I took a moment, collecting my thoughts. Its shattered trust made me question my own judgment and left a gaping void in what was supposed to be the most secure part of my life. While I seek justice for the financial fraud, no verdict can compensate for the emotional upheaval. The courtroom was silent, hanging on to every word. As the trial came to a close, the judge, after brief deliberation, delivered his verdict. Given the evidence presented and the testimony heard, it is clear that Mr. Hamilton not only committed financial fraud, but also caused considerable emotional distress. He is hereby sentenced to 2 years in prison and is mandated to repay the stolen amount. A chorus of murmurs erupted. Richard's face paled, the weight of his actions finally sinking in. Outside the courtroom, as the sun began to set, Sarah and Jake flanked me. "You did it, Mia," Sarah whispered, her eyes moist. "It's finally over," Jake added. "Justice has been served, but remember, this is just the beginning. There's a whole life ahead, free from Richard's shadows." I nodded, realizing that while one chapter of my life had come to a tumultuous close, another filled with hope and new beginnings was about to commence. Months passed since the trial, and the seasons changed, marking the passage of time and the shift in my life's trajectory. The beautiful autumnal hues reflected my inner transformation, from the pain of betrayal to the warmth of newfound resilience. I'd taken a sabbatical from work, needing time away from the city's bustle to heal. Sarah's cottage in the countryside became my sanctuary, surrounded by open fields, chirping birds, and a serenity that the urban landscape couldn't offer. I began to piece my life back together. One evening, as I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, Sarah joined me, handing me a letter with no return address. My heart raced. The handwriting was unmistakably Richard's. Sarah, sensing my apprehension, said, "You don't have to read it if you're not ready." Taking a deep breath, I began to read. The letter was filled with confessions, apologies, and reflections on his mistakes. It wasn't a plea for reconciliation, but rather an acknowledgement of his wrongdoings and the pain he'd caused. "I never meant for things to escalate this way," it read. "The allure of another life away from our routine blinded me. But by the time I realized my folly, I was too deep into the lie. I'm truly sorry, Mia. I hope in time you find it in your heart to forgive me, not for my sake, but for your own peace." I folded the letter, my emotions a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and contemplation. Sarah, ever the voice of reason, gently remarked, "He's given his perspective, Mia. But closure is a personal journey. It's up to you how or if you want to respond." Days turned into weeks, and the letter weighed heavily on my mind. One crisp morning, inspired by the serene landscape, I penned my response. Richard. I began. Your letter was unexpected. The pain and betrayal I felt were profound. But through the darkness I've found strength, understanding, and self-worth. While I can't forget, I choose to forgive. Not for you, but for me. I wish you a life of reflection and hope you find the redemption you seek. Sending the letter was cathartic. It felt like releasing the last tether that bound me to the past. The following months were transformative. I returned to work with renewed vigor, took up new hobbies, and even started a support group for individuals recovering from personal betrayals. Jake and Sarah remained my pillars, and together we celebrated life's small joys. One evening, as we gathered at our favorite bistro, Sarah raised her glass to new beginnings, unwavering friendships, and the power of closure. Jake smiled, adding to Maya for showing us that no matter how challenging the journey, there's always light at the end. I grinned, my heart full, to life with all its twists and turns. May we always find our way. And as the night enveloped the city, I felt genuinely free, ready to embrace the future, unburdened and with an open heart.